Hello class, Miss Olson here. We're going to work on the compositional sketches for our landscape practices. This is a 3-part practice. Today we're going to just do the sketches part. Next time we'll work on blocking in some grayscales on 2 of these. And then the last practice will be working a little bit more with color. So it's important that you only do what I show you. If you rush ahead and start filling in your paint, you're going to have to redo your steps. So be patient, only do what you're shown. Now, with that in mind, you also need to not copy me. So I do not want to see any copies of what I show you. These are to help you and to guide you, but you need to use your own brain and your own creativity and make adjustments that are your own. So no direct copies of mine. I'll make you redo them if I see them. So with all of that out there in the world, let's move on to actually doing our practices. And so I chose 4 different composition types from the instructions. You can use these ones, but you can also do the different ones that you see in the instructions as well. In fact, go look and change them up yourself. I chose the S-curve, the cross, the pyramid, and the diagonal. And every time that you start one of these, you're going to put in the horizon line. And the horizon is where the sky meets the earth. So pick a point and then draw a line across the paper, and that's where the horizon is. So for the S curve, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to have an S, and the S is actually going to be on the land part of the landscape. And I'm drawing super light because I don't want this to show through my paint. For the cross, same deal. I'm going to find a spot to draw the horizon. And then with the cross, there's a line that goes partway through vertically. The pyramid is just a big old pyramid. So let's put in our horizon. And then the pyramid can be centered, but it doesn't have to be. You can do an obtuse pyramid and a cube pyramid, you know. I guess they all have obtuse and acute angles if they're not right angles. But you can have a pyramid. It doesn't have to be like perfectly centered. It can be slightly off-centered. And the last one is a diagonal. So one last time with my horizon. And experiment a little bit. Put the horizon in different places and see what you kind of like the most. So I'll put my diagonal that way. All right. So that's just the basic. That's the basic outline. That's the first little image on the examples for your instructions. After that, I kind of want to switch over to using paint to sketch. That's something that I want to encourage you all to try as well. So don't just use a pencil the whole time, because a lot of times the pencil shows through in ways that we don't enjoy. And to make your sort of sketch color, I recommend a brown, a very watered down pale brown. You can get that a few ways. If you take orange and you add a tiny bit of black to it, it creates an okay brown. Add a little more red to mine because I like mine to be slightly sepia toned, which just means it's a warmer brown rather than a flat brown. And once I have that mixed, I'm going to add some water to it because I want it to be very transparent. It is not meant to add much to the image. It's just there to sketch some outlines. Okay, so rinsing my brush. And this is where I kind of like look and I get a feel, right? So the S curve, that's just a start. What do I want my S to be? It could be a river. It could be a sidewalk or a road. It could be lots of things. So I kind of want to decide that. And I'm very just sort of lightly going to paint in the edges of whatever that is. So in this case, I'm going to make it a river. So I'm painting the edges of a river. And one thing to know about rivers and lines is they go back into the background as they get skinnier as they go into the background, and they get wider as they come towards us. So do that as well if you have any sort of shapes that recede into the back. So I've got my river, and on my river, I want it to be going back between some mountains. So I'm going to add some mountains back here, just using those triangular shapes that I learned about in the last practice. And I want like some trees. And I'm not painting anything in, I'm just getting the basic shapes. So I'm kind of doing like popsicle trees with just the trunks. So nothing too big. And as they go back, they're going to get smaller. So remember our lesson on space. One thing you can also do is just kind of like treat them as blobs when they're further away. So just big old masses rather than individual trees. And as we get closer, we'll get more detailed. Also notice how I'm kind of working from back to front. As we move upwards, maybe I'll have some bushes along the river. There. So I'm just trying to fill it in. I've got a background, the far off area. I've got stuff that's sort of in the middle, and then I've got stuff up close. That's the sort of goal. You want to have a background, middle ground, and foreground. That's going to be really important when we get to the next steps of our practices. And this part, that's done. Right? I don't got to touch any more of that. I'm going to save it for later. So this is that's kind of what I want you to do for all of these. So the pyramid, this one's different. The pyramid's more about a big old mass. So I had to decide what that mass is going to be. Very easy. It could be a mountain, but it also could be a big grouping of different types of trees. So maybe those like really tall, thin trees that you see in like Eastern Washington that frame the different farmlands. I think they're aspens. I could be wrong, but it could be a bunch of those just sort of stacked in on each other. At the base, it could be some bushes. Maybe there's a sort of a weeping willow tree here. And I'm not going into a lot of details, so remember that we're not adding too much here, just the general shapes, and we'll fill them in later. Okay, so I've got that pyramid shape here, just a big group of trees and some bushes. I also have the horizon line, so I kind of want to decide what to do there. I could say that there's some very distant mountains. You, of course, can break it up just a little bit, so maybe there are some trees back here, just not very tall, but far away. Maybe there's some clouds in the sky, because I left a lot of sky on this one. I left a lot of sky. So I can break it up a little bit with some clouds. And then maybe there's a couple. I'll just spread out bushes here. There we go. I got my pyramid. Notice as I'm painting, my paint is super thin. You can see the white of the paper through it. That's the goal. It shouldn't be very thick at all. So if you're working with pretty thick paint, make sure to clean your brush, add a bit of water, and definitely water down that paint. So it's just a thin glaze. That's our objective here. Okay, so the cross, we've got our horizon line, we've got a vertical, that could be a tree, it could be a power pole if you want some sort of like human interference here. It could be, I'm trying to think of other long, tall things. Mostly thinking of trees, that's all that's coming to mind right now. But if you can think of something else, it can be something else. It doesn't have to be those things necessarily. I am going to work with it as a tree, so like a big old trunk. I'm going to make mine fairly wide. So because this vertical line that you drew as a guideline is thin, doesn't mean it has to stay that way. So I'm going to do a big trunk, kind of reminiscent of the, I think it was Earl Evans images that I showed in the course announcement. Love to put big old honking trees right in the middle like this. Love that sort of cross composition. And so I've got that tree there, and that leaves a lot of opportunity for some textural practice. But then I still, again, I have that sort of background area with the horizon line. So maybe I'll do some scattered low clouds here. Nothing too up front. And just some rolling hills. Nothing too fancy. I want the focus to be on this tree. I'll kind of put them in like little waves of water almost, but there'll be hills. Okay, so last one is diagonal. That diagonal line can be made from lots of different things. It could be, again, a mountain, really easy. It could be a crooked tree. It could be a cliff face. It could be a bunch of shrubs all sort of stacked up along. I'm going to say it's like a cliffside going down towards the beach. So I'm going to have sort of, if you've ever been to the beach over here, we've got these areas that can get pretty steep. So we'll have the top of the cliff here, and it'll kind of fall down towards the base here. We might not even see the bottom of the cliff. And then we've got, this would just be water because we're at the beach. So a bunch of water there. You could put something like a boat. Again, if you do multiple boats, know that they'll get bigger as they get closer to us. And if I wanted some clouds, this would be a good place to add some clouds over the water. Okay. So there we go. Each of these has background elements, middle ground elements. So here it's the rolling hills, and then a foreground, which is the tree. Same thing here, background with the sky, the hills, and then the big triangle area, which is going to be the middle ground, and a couple of small foreground bushes. Here, the foreground is the big cliff, middle ground is the ocean and the boats, and the background is the clouds. So you want those different layers for all of them. And at that point, this is done. This is done for the session for today. And then we'll add to these more later. So don't paint these in yet. Save them for later. And good luck. Add your own pieces and parts and your own ideas. And I look forward to seeing what you make.